In this video, we're going to divide two complex numbers. So we have a complex number on top and a complex number on bottom, and remember that complex numbers are written a plus and minus bi. So we want to try to get to this form from this division. Well, to do that, we're going to need to multiply by the conjugate to the denominator here. So I'm going to start by negative 4 plus 52i over 3 minus 5i. And I'll write what my conjugate is here. My conjugate for the denominator would be 3 plus 5i, right? It's always opposite side. So I'm going to multiply the bottom by 3 plus 5i. But if I do it to the bottom, I have to do it to the top so I don't change the fraction. Now make sure you use parentheses here. You got two terms being multiplied times two terms. We'll start on top. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 4 times 5i is negative 20i. 52i times 3 would be 156, so plus 156i. Then we have 52i times 5i, so 52 times 5 is 260. So I have plus 260i squared. Now on the bottom, because we're multiplying the conjugate, we should have some things cancel. 3 times 3, 9. 3 times 5i, 15i. Negative 5i times 3, that's negative 15i. And then negative 5i times positive 5i will be negative 25i squared. So you can see in the denominator, these two things will cancel, 15i and negative 15i. Now in the numerator, I have an I squared, which I know I squared is negative 1, and I have an I squared in the denominator as well. And I can combine the middle terms. So I'm going to have negative 12 plus 136i when I combine negative 20i with 156i, plus 260 times I squared, which we know is negative 1, over, we have 9 minus 25 times I squared, which we know is negative 1. Let's simplify a little more. On top, that's negative 260. When I combine it with the negative 12, I get negative 272 plus 136i. On the bottom, I have negative 25 times negative 1, which would be positive 25. So I have really 9 plus 25, which is 34. Now I should be able to do some simplification here. So if I take 136 divided by 34, I get 4. So I'm going to split this to negative 272 over 34 plus 136i over 34. And these both reduce to, I have 4i here, and negative 272 divided by 34 is negative 8. So I have negative 8 plus 4i, which you can see now we are in our a plus and minus bi form, complex number form. Let's do a second example here. Okay, first thing I'll do is I'll write down what the conjugate is. So the conjugate of the denominator is 6 minus 2i. So I need to multiply this fraction by 6 minus 2i over 6 minus 2i. Now as I go to multiply this, on top I get 32 times 6, which is 192. 32 times negative 2i will be negative 64i. 44i times 6 is 264i. And 44i times negative 2i is negative 88i squared. And then we're going to have on the denominator here, we have 6 times 6, which is 36, 6 times negative 2i, which is negative 12i. 2i times 6, which is positive 12i. And 2i times negative 2i, which is negative 4i squared. Let's combine these middle terms here. So I have 192. Combine the middle on top. I got negative 64 plus 264, that's plus 200i. Minus 88 times, we know I squared is negative 1, so I can replace I squared with negative 1. And on the bottom I have 36, negative 12i and positive 12i cancel. So I have minus 4, and we know I squared is negative 1. Now I end up with a negative 88 times negative 1 is positive 88. If I add that with 192, so 192 plus 88 would be 280 plus 200i. Divided by, on the bottom, negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4, so that ends up being 40. Now I'm going to split this denominator, so I have 280 over 40 plus 200i over 40. 280 plus, or divided by 40 is 7, plus 200i over 40 would be 5i. So I'm back to my complex number form, which is a plus and minus bi. And that's how you divide two complex numbers. Use the conjugate.